Hello, welcome to another episode of the Sports Minority Report. Today there was some breaking news coming out of Memphis. Memphis apparently made an attempt to more or less buy their way into the Big 12. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. If you need a little additional information on this, 365 Sports reported this. With David Smoke, Craig Smoke, and Paul Catalina. They really did a pretty good job of reporting on it, but I have different perspectives on it that I think you'll enjoy. First, let's take a look at what Russ Dellinger reported, and you can see kind of what Memphis offered to the Big 12. Okay, let's look at what Ross Dellinger said about this. He described Memphis's proposal is described as a no-risk concept. The school would, one, take zero distribution for 5 years, so no TV money for 5 years, which is pretty much the offer that they made the Big 12 the last time. Two, they would add in sponsorships as much as $3 million annually to each Big 12 school. Now that's a big deal. There's 16 Big 12 schools, so you're talking about a $48 million that they're guaranteeing would come in sponsorships, probably from FedEx. FedEx is based in Memphis, and they're fans of Memphis more or less. A lot of the higher ups at FedEx. Three, Memphis would subject itself to expulsion after 2030 if the Big 12 deems it is not adding media value or value. I'm assuming that's media value. Well, that's kind of a big deal. You know, that's basically saying, look, we're going to give you the same offer we offered before, plus $3 million each for each school in sponsorships. And if you determine that we're not good enough, we'll leave. Okay, so that's a pretty big time deal that they offered. You know, that's last time when OU and Texas were in the Big 12, they offered to just play in the conference for a full media cycle without getting paid, and you know, all the other schools could split up the payment that Memphis would receive. Now they're taking it a step further. They're basically saying, okay, look, you know, the media partners are claiming that we're not worthy of a media share. You know, we're going to prove it. You know, we will go in there. You know, since the media partners say that we're not worth a media share, you're going to assume that they won't pay you. So we're going to guarantee you a $3 million sponsorship for each school in the Big 12. You know, and that's going to that's basically going to offset the money so that the media partner doesn't have to pay a cent to get Memphis in the conference. I mean, this should have been, if the Big 12 was playing fairly with Memphis, this should have been an offer that got them in. You know, if you look at Memphis and you consider them to be nearly a peer, this is a pretty darn good offer, but the Big 12 didn't accept it at all. Now this is huge. I mean, this is telling you guys exactly what I've been telling you. Memphis is not going to be in the Power Four. They're going to be probably in the Pac and the Big East. And let me just explain my logic on all of this. Okay. Why would Memphis make this offer to the Big 12? Just think about that. Why wouldn't they make it to the ACC? You know, the ACC has a history with SMU. They took money to put a team into the conference. Why is Memphis not just going to the ACC? Well, the obvious answer is because Notre Dame, under their leadership, they said they're going to rebuild the ACC. Well, they didn't say specifically that. They said that they would try to either rebuild the ACC with like-minded schools if schools should leave, or they would just go with the existing schools they have. But either way, both of those options do not seem to include Memphis. And literally, since that word leaked out of the ACC, you've seen Memphis take a much more positive attitude towards the Pac. Now, also, what's happened in that time window is that you've seen the Big East step up and actively pursue Memphis's Olympic sports for their conference. Now, that if you can't get into the P4, being in the Pac for football and the Big East for basketball is literally about as good as you can get it if you're Memphis. And that's a good long-term position if you're Memphis and it looks like you're going to get squeezed out of the ACC because you're not academically good enough. You're going to get passed over by the Big 12 because you're not in their top list of candidates, which is something else that they covered in 365 Sports in that article that you'll find listed in the notes for this story, the link there. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip next.
Possibilities here. I did reach out to some people in college football to try to get their idea about why is Memphis always left at the altar if they even get there. The problem with Memphis that they fight on occasion is anytime they do something big, it seems to be followed with an NCAA investigation.
Currently basketball, yeah.
NCAA investigations could last 3 to 4 years. We looked at them before. If you think about it, we had people on the expansion committee. Here's the problem. We took 4 schools. I don't think that even they were 5th. So that's from somebody that knows the inside of when the last time. And not sure, no matter what, even though Memphis is the city itself, if they take it up or get enough pull when it comes to the next TV negotiations, which will be at the end of this decade.
Well,
so
this goes back to what I said in the previous 2 sports minority reports. Memphis might be the 5th best team in a 4-horse race for Big 12 membership. It's if you look at it, Memphis does not appear to have advocates, and that's the thing. Now, why don't they have advocates? I don't know. Is it, it feels like there's a dirty little underlying thing where Memphis may be a school with too much of a black presence and just not really appreciated properly because of that, which is kind of ugly and dirty, but man, it feels that way. It really does. I mean, if you told me that some other school, let's say Tulane, had offered that same offer to the Big 12, I kind of think they'd be in. If USF had offered that deal, and those schools aren't competitively better than Memphis. They're in fact competitively worse because they're only single sport schools. Memphis is good at football and basketball. They're still getting passed over. There's a lot of yuck to this story. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. You have Memphis, which is one of the probably top 20 brands in terms of basketball attendance in college sports. I mean, they're a big brand that has won national titles. You look at football. They're at the top of their conference most years. And they can't give you money to take them on a trial basis. With a clause in there that says we will peacefully leave if you guys decide that we don't offer any value. I mean, what the hell, man? I mean, that's pretty harsh. So, again, it goes back to what I was saying in the last 2 sports minority reports. The Pac is really being very short-sighted to just concede Memphis's Olympic sports over to the Big East. I think that's really what's going to happen. You're going to see the Pac add Memphis for football, and Memphis will put their Olympic sports in the Big East. They'll be prepared to do it over greater than 27 months, but I think they'll negotiate a deal to get out sooner. But that's really what I'm seeing here. Now, if the Pac is smart, they're going to look at this and say, you know what, we're being idiots. We need to get Memphis basketball into our conference. We need to go ahead and figure out a way to get that done. If it means that Memphis gets slightly more, you got to talk with your membership and see if people can live with that. I mean, maybe for the short term, something like that to just make this thing happen. I mean, adding Memphis basketball really improves the Pac in a dramatic way. It gives them solid footing in the Central Time Zone, where they can look at, potentially adding a few more Central Time Zone schools that are good at basketball, and really dominating basically from the Central Time Zone to the Pacific Coast. That's good TV money, and it will pay for itself. But will they do that? I don't have an answer. I feel really bad for the fans of Memphis today, but only to a point. I feel bad because you're kind of embarrassed because your school got turned down. But I don't feel bad because I feel like this was them crossing off the last thing that they had to check. It's like, hey man, if we give this sweetheart deal to the Big 12, will the Big 12 even let us in? No, they won't. Well, I guess we need to move on. Now, is there anything else Memphis could possibly do, should do, prior to moving on and talking to the Pac and the Big East? I would say it is worth making one last attempt to talk to the ACC, to say, look, you guys have a perception issue. If you add us, we kind of help that perception issue because you're getting stronger, and that removes an option for the Big 12. It's not a bad position for Memphis to take. That having been said, there have been comments that you can find online about people in the ACC kind of looking down on the city of Memphis and the university academically, and just not being very enthusiastic about the idea of adding Memphis. So my gut feeling is that if they don't want you in your club, you're not getting in. But I don't think this is a bad thing for Memphis. If you're in the Big East for basketball, you're competing you're in one of the top 5 conferences for basketball. If you're in the Pac for basketball, you're probably moving ahead of the Big East and still in the top 5 conference for basketball. If you're in the Pac for football, you're probably in the driver's seat conference to get into the playoffs. I don't know what else you could ask for if you're Memphis if you can't get into the P4. I mean, that's like being P4 and a half, and the money is going to be good. If you get a 2/3 share from the Pac and you get 100% share from the Big East, you might be looking at $15 million. You might be the highest paid school outside of the P4 conferences. It's just I think Memphis is about to walk into a win-win situation, and shame on the Big 12 for being stupid about it. Memphis was a smart school, for them to add. Try it out on a trial run. What's to say you couldn't do a trial run of UConn and Memphis? You might have to. I think you would get a little bit of money for UConn up front, even though the networks want to say that Memphis isn't worth any money. They're repeatedly throwing this out, or isn't worth P4 money. They even in the PAC negotiations at one point, the partners the PAC was negotiating with looked at all of the schools available and allegedly implied that none of the schools that they were looking at really changed the general trajectory of the PAC. I think that's a bunch of horse shit. I think that Memphis is being underrated across the board by everyone. I think Memphis is a game-changing school, at the P5 level. Maybe not the P4 level, but definitely at the P5 level. And I think we'll see that in the future. Memphis is going to make that happen. And that's why I don't feel that badly for Memphis fans, because Memphis is making it happen right now. They're pushing the right buttons, they're taking the right steps, they're doing everything they can, and maybe they get a bite. Probably they're not, but they'll definitely have options. They're going to have a better home than the American Conference in the very near future. And that does bring up one other thing. Look at the timing. The American Athletic Conference just changed their name to the American Conference. So they just changed this, and this was their big branding announcement time. And Memphis goes and steps on that and says, yeah, we put our name into the Big 12 and got rejected. Why would Memphis step on that? Memphis is leaving. I think it's pretty clear they're heading out the door. The American no longer offers them the home that they want to be in. And I think this is the start of problems for the American. If you like what I had to say, please like this, subscribe. If you want others to hear what I had to say, give me a thumbs up, and the great YouTube machine will push me on to other viewers, onward and upward. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you like what I've had to say today.